Hey everyone, I hope all of you are doing well today, and today we are turning the Boardslide flat ride into the ship of Sinbad. Get ready for the storm. Before we actually get started, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more. Now let the chaos begin. Alright, we're starting the Arabian area, but before we get started on the Arabian area, I first want to say we're not abandoning the main street. It was actually funny because when I either teased this build or was talking about finishing the coaster, one of those posts, I think when I was teasing this build, somebody commented, "But are you going to finish the main street? It would be really funny if you didn't." And they misspelled finish as in Finland, and I was just thinking, do they have buildings like this in Finland? I mean, I know that it's like a pretty popular style from like around that time, but like it's supposed to be French, and then I understood, oh, they misspelled it. It would actually be kind of funny if I just turned the entire main street Finnish. Anyway, but yeah, we're not abandoning the main street. Actually, the next build that I have in store for you guys is back on the main street. It's one of the 3 remaining big builds, as I would call them. And I'm really happy with how it's turning out, because it's hyper-focus galore. But the last few days, it has been like 30 to 35 degrees in the Netherlands. And if you understand the Netherlands, you would understand that that is hell on earth. Because it's humid as hell, because there's water everywhere. So you're just constantly just a zombie. But the heat had the nice side effect of me wanting to build desert stuff, because it felt like a desert, but then also submerged. European heat, or at least Dutch heat, is just like a thing on its own, because like I have been to Southeast Asia. Like I am half Indonesian, I have been to Indonesia, but like there 35 degrees is not as bad as here for some reason, and I don't understand it. Like I've also been like 35 degree weather in like Rome, and it's not as bad here as here. Is it really just all of the humidity? I don't know. Anyways, let's start talking about the actual builds, because when it comes to this ride, this was one of the builds that I had in mind basically from the start of Mythos, because the ride just fits so well with the story of like Sinbad and his 7 voyages. I think at least it's 7, but I'm horrible with remembering numbers. It would be really funny if it was like 9 or 18 voyages, but I think it's 7. But like the dude gets shipwrecked. Like he gets caught up in storms and shipwrecked all the time. I think every voyage of him, he gets shipwrecked. And I would say, as a logical thinking person, after like the second time you get shipwrecked, you would just not step on a ship. But I get that for like story-wise, it makes sense for him to constantly get back on the ship. But yeah, so I just wanted to build his ship on the Boardslide ride and then mimic like it's going in a storm. The only thing that didn't really fit with like the entire idea of like Sinbad and the ship and such is that the actual platform of this ride is rectangular. If you know ships, they are not rectangular, so I had to do some magic with some fake waves to hide the rectangular bit. And also like the ship, not perfect. Definitely far from perfect. But I tried my best, and if you don't look at it too closely, it looks like a ship. And luckily I already, this is back to the olden times. For Kian al-Bashar, I actually already built ships like these, so I kind of knew how to build them. And for some reason, it's kind of just like muscle memory for these kinds of ship. Even though I haven't built them in like 2 to 3 years, I still remember, oh yeah, this needs to go like this and this needs to go like this, to kind of sell the idea of like a smooth ship. Don't look at the fake waves though, because this is just a thing with like making things out of basic shapes. They kind of have the tendency to look like balloon animals. Even if you build statues out of basic shapes, they kind of look like balloon animals. I usually try to kind of get away from that by not putting any like facial features in statues if I ever make them. But still, it's very easy to turn them into balloon animals. But yeah, so when it came to the waves, they are just there to hide the rectangular bits, also to kind of give the idea of like a storm and the waves just going crazy. Now, the name of the ride is also Storm. You might think, oh, Poison didn't have any creativity, like why the name Storm? Actually, it works really well because, as I said, Sinbad gets shipwrecked like 7 times. Maybe 9. My brain is still kind of mush. Because again, Dutch heat is something else. Also, Dutch houses are meant to keep heat in, which means that it takes a day for a house to cool down. Unless you like throw open all of the windows, but then Dutch weather is so nice that it might also start raining. And then your house is wet. So, yeah. Anyways, so when it comes to the name Storm, I like the name just because it's simple. Like, I don't want really complicated names for rides in theme parks, or at least that to me makes sense, that like a name is not overtly complicated. That's also when it came to like looking for names of like the different areas. I was just like, oh yeah, what name, especially actually for the Japanese area, like what name could I find that makes sense but is also not like difficult to say for any non-Japanese speaking person. So when it came to this ride, Storm was just a perfect fit because it doesn't tie it to any of the any specific voyage of Sinbad, because again, the dude gets shipwrecked every voyage, so it could be any of those voyages where you're now stuck in. And it's just very simple and easy to translate, because that's also like a thing. If you like, you see that in the Efteling right now, but especially with like Baron 1898, where like they specifically chose a name that would be easy translatable or easy for English speaking people as the park became more internationally focused. And I would say that Mythos is probably very internationally focused. I would also think that Mythos is probably based somewhere in Norway or something, looking at like the terrain surrounding it, which actually brought like a little bit of a downer for this build. That it's because the terrain that we're working with, it's like this I think tundra or taiga biome, but it doesn't have any sand as in terrain paint, which is kind of critical if you want to actually build like a desert themed area. I also am kind of curious how like the Greek area is going to work, because I would also need sand there. But for some reason, like, does Norway not have sand? Or like Scandinavia? Like, are you guys all just sandless? Like, are all of your beaches actually? That would no. I would understand, like, yeah, probably a majority of your beaches are like rocks and pebbles, but there's going to be sand. Or are you guys just all allergic to sand? Why don't I have sand terrain paint for this biome? So I just had to make my own fake sand, which is just like throwing a whole lot of terrain paints over each other that have kind of the look of sand, but still aren't sand. So I kind of made it work. Luckily, when it comes to like the Arabian area, I can veer more into like desert oasis, but I mean, this is supposed to be on a beach. Actually, for this entire ride, I just made a lake. Just because it would look pretty. And also the next build is going to have a view over the lake. And for that build, it makes sense to have like a nice view. Also to hyper focus on windows, but that's something for the next video. But yeah, still working on the boat. Because it was probably the most complicated thing. But after that, I was so happy with it. Also having like all of like the goods, because it made the ship look a little bit more alive. I did, however, not panel in the middle bit of the what do you call this? The cart? It's not a train like you would have in a coaster, but like just the right vehicle. Maybe that's the best word for it. But I didn't panel in the middle bit because I would imagine that like if the ride breaks down or if there's something wrong, they can open up the middle compartment and just tinker with it to make it work again. Now, of course, because it is a ship and it's supposed to be like a storm and such, I needed to build a lighthouse. Basically, I just wanted to build a giant tower. Because if you know me, if you've been with the channel for any period of time, you know that I love building towers. Because they add just some nice height difference or height variation. Like you have all of your regular buildings and then you have a massive tower. Towers are just great, and I'm sad that we don't really build them like this anymore. Because again, towers are great. So yeah, I had to build a tower. Because I wanted to build a tower, so that means I have to build a tower. And when it comes to this ride, it actually makes sense. Now, when it comes to this ride, I also looked into like, oh, what other things can I do when it comes to the Arabian area, like what other rides? And I came across like the story of Ali Baba and his 40 thieves, and that tale is surprisingly brutal. Like, there's dismemberment, there's setting people on fire, there's also just plain up murder. So, like, I get that, like, most of these tales are probably, like, if they're ever told to children, they're very much, like, trying to get rid of all of the really dark stuff. But I like the really dark stuff, so I am already planning a ride where you are in a pot being boiled. Yes, that is in the tales of like the 40 thieves, I think, being boiled alive with hot oil. So it's not even water. So you're on fire, but also just... However, probably like when it comes to the actual ride, you're just like in a pot and there's like a fake fire. But it alludes to something very dark. It's always fun when you're like, oh yeah, I kind of know the Disney version of the tale, and then you find the actual tale and you're like, holy fuck. The people who wrote these stories need therapy. So yeah, also just look up like any fairy tales of like the Brothers Grimm. Look any of them up and then compare it to the Disney-fied version of it. You will see why they Disney-fied it. I think with like Cinderella, they like the evil stepsisters cut off their toes and their heel just to fit into the shoe, and here just shows that the prince in that story is just a complete blank slate. He didn't notice until blood was literally pouring out of the shoe. And then after all of that, I think the evil stepsisters and maybe the stepmom got their eyes picked out by birds. So, yeah. Also, I think this is Snow White, where the evil queen didn't like die at the end. Or well, she did die, but in a different way than Disney does. Because in the actual fairy tale, she dies because she comes to the wedding feast of Snow White and the prince. And she gets to wear iron slippers, which are heated into the fire first, and then she's told to dance until she dies. If I had a fairy tale like area in Mythos, I would use that version. And it would be really funny of like, oh yeah, there's a fairy tale area in Mythos. Let's bring all of the children because it's nice and child friendly, and it's just like the horrific versions of all of the fairy tales, and the children leave mentally scarred for life. Maybe I'm just evil, but I would love to do that. Although I'm already like looking at the area and I'm just like, how do I fit the Greek area in here? Like, how do I make this... this is all because I put a lake for this ride. It kind of messed with like the layout of the park, but like I don't want to get rid of the lake because it looks pretty here. and I could make the lake turn into a waterfall into the centerpiece area, and I want a waterfall. That also kind of makes sense. So yeah. Now when it comes to all of the rocks, I mean, I had to hide the actual right part itself, and I'm very happy that we now have recolorable rocks. Also that it's not just like a couple of rocks. No, they took all of the rocks that we had, like all of the different shapes, and turned them into recolorable versions, which I also want in Planet Zoo. But then I'm also like trying to... This is a bad side effect of Planet Coaster 2 on Planet Zoo for me. I'm trying to scale all of the rocks in Planet Zoo, and I'm just like, why isn't this working? Oh wait, this is why it's not working. Also, just a quick note on Planet Zoo and Naturalis. Naturalis isn't dead. I am just scatterbrained as fuck. I have 4 different builds that I'm working on in Naturalis. But because I'm so scatterbrained, I do like this on that build, this on that build, this on that build, this on that build, and none of the builds get finished. I actually was working on a build for like the recent Asia Animal Pack, and I just went and built this because of the Dutch heat, and I knew I wouldn't be able to finish that before I had to go for the weekend. So yeah, 2 things came out in the same week basically, which meant that Poison's brain just went complete haywire. But I built this, so good. But I also still have to finish the main street. We're not going to turn it finish, we're going to finish it eventually. We got some sort of skeletons in the new update with the pirate team, but we don't get actual bones yet, so maybe I have to think of another idea besides like Parisian catacombs. But I want to have like a coaster going through like catacombs and such. I also just wanted a complete like indoor coaster, because that to me makes a lot of sense, that like a theme park has at least 1 indoor coaster. And just the story that I have, or at least like the idea that I have for that coaster, just works really well for an indoor thing, because you want it like dark and such, and then suddenly things light up and such. Am I going to try and make it so that like Marie Antoinette just pops out of a grave without a head? No, originally not, but now I have an idea. Sometimes I literally get ideas during these voiceovers, and just like Marie Antoinette is just such an iconic figure, and to just have her as like a ghost popping out of like the catacombs, or ghost animatronic without a head. Maybe I could just center the entire ride around that. Like you're trying to chase Marie Antoinette's headless corpse through the catacombs. I don't know why that's so funny to me. But yeah, Marie Antoinette is pretty much a very tragic tale, but the entire ride idea that I have for it is just really funny to me, because I have very morbid humor. So yeah, I could also make, was it not, France has so many like Louises, like is it Louis the 16th? I think. Probably also mispronouncing that because of the Dutch accent. The Dutch accent is horrible when it comes to pronouncing some things. Or is it Louis? Louis the 16th. Because Louis is, I think, like Lewis and Clark, and it's like American something. I don't know. For some reason, I always just think when I say Lewis, I just think Lewis and Clark, and I just think of beaver hats. I don't know why. Like, I think they're like historical figures, but like I have no idea really what they are from. Were they like explorers or adventurers that like traversed the US, or at least traversed North America? I don't know. For some reason, I just think of beaver hats. I really don't know why. Sometimes, like, this is really weird. Like, the weirdest things stick in my memory. but actual useful things don't. So while I'm like, let's say if I'm cooking, I have to have the recipe open, because I will just do like, oh yeah, I have to put in this. I will walk to the pan. What did I need to put in again? Like, I have to have it open, because I need to constantly check, because my memory is just shattered. But for some reason, I still know how to build a ship. And also think of beaver hats for some reason. Anyways, back to the actual build. Enough tangents, even though I know for certain that like by the end of this video there will be at least 3 more tangents. But when it came to this ride and like the actual entrance of it, for a long time I was just like, what am I going to do here? Like, what can I, like, this is supposed to be kind of like the harbor area. Like, if you have like areas within areas, so the harbor area within the Arabian area here, like this was supposed to be like, oh yeah, harbor. But then a harbor doesn't really fit in here, because it would just be like kind of weird to have like a small bit of harbor that is barely visible, and then also none of the other areas are really tied to harbors or a sea. Well, there's one ride that could potentially be tied to water, but like I think that's more like lakey, so that idea had to go away. And then it was just like, what do I build? Like, what can I make the entrance into? And then it just became like sort of a market area. So at the end, like the queue is not going to be entirely finished, because this is the reason why I usually don't veer away from what I've been building beforehand, because then it's basically just like, if you're laying out a puzzle, like you go for the puzzle pieces adjacent to what you've already placed before. If you try and veer away from that, it's very difficult, because you're just missing those connecting pieces. So when it comes to this, right, because it's completely on its own, I still have to figure out like, how does this work well with the rest? And the queue for this area, or for this ride, I think goes into like the area of the rest of the Arabian area. So I have to be kind of careful with that, of like, oh, how am I going to do this well? So I also in the end built like a nice fountain, because it's a desert area. There's going to be a lot of fountains, because water is important and also pretty. So then it was just like, alright, this fountain, why is it here? And then I thought like, oh, this could be like the courtyard of like a house. And then like have a fountain in the middle, like you're going through a house for some reason. Maybe it's like, actually an idea that could work is that the house is like sort of like a tavern where you as a sailor sign up to sail for Sinbad, which, just heads up, don't do that. Dude gets shipwrecked a lot, and I think most of the time his crew doesn't survive, so don't. But then I had to think like, alright, so maybe it's like a house or a tavern. How is this going to work? Like, how is this going to fit in with the rest of the area? So before I actually built the building, I'm going to first of all finish the main street. And then we're going back to this area and build more rides, so that we're sort of building up the puzzle a bit more. But now it's just fountain, you go around the fountain, there's some trees, some bushes, and that's it. And as soon as we get further on in the area is just going to come alive a lot more. Also when it comes to just how everything is. Now the one thing when it's getting to the fountain is none of the water pieces work. They're all too big, they're too thick, and just they don't work. So I actually had to go for fake water. Like, I don't know where I found it, but there's something that kind of looks like water, but it's completely fake. But it sells the idea well enough, and that's good enough for me. So yeah, don't know what it is. I think it's a sign or some kind, but it looks like water. If you color it right, it works really well. It looks like moving water. So sometimes the idea doesn't work, but in the end you find a piece that doesn't belong there but works well. So that sentence was completely grammatically incorrect and unfollowable, but I don't think anyone expects anything else from me by this point. So yeah, when it came to the fountain, half of it, or well, the lower bit is actual water or an actual water piece, and then all of like the layers above, fake water. But I mean, it's a theme park, so not everything is, well, most of the things are not real. Like all of the facades are just facades. Like I would suspect that like behind the facades of the main street there's just like warehouse areas and such, especially when it comes to like the gift shop. Like behind it there's just like concrete storage areas for all of the merchandise that they sell, which is probably very expensive. Because I kind of see Mythos as being at the same level as... I mean, when it's fully finished, I would say Europa Park. Which means that yes, all of the shit is very expensive. Also, when it comes to like the gift shop, I want to redo... Well, not redo it. I want to keep all of like the... What are they called again? Not the... What is it called again? I don't remember what it is called. But like all of the display areas, that is what it's called. I want to keep all of those and just kind of fake the actual... Like... this working displays. So that the guests can walk through the gift shop and they can pick up stuff. But you don't actually see the actual... the working displays. You see the fake ones that I made. So I don't think that that's going to be a video. That's probably just going to be like either when we're building more houses for the main street, because I still need to build a lot more facades, then that's going to kind of just be sneaked in there, but it's not going to be a video on its own. But yeah, anyways, so back to the actual build that we're building now. So when it comes to the queue, you can already see that I have a tendency to just build cattle pens. Because the first thing that I built was just a cattle pen. And then I was just like, no, we're not doing that. We're going to make a breakaway area where if the queue gets like too long, they can open up this area. And that's just supposed to be kind of like a garden and a little bit of a market area. I had fun building the stalls, which I knew I was going to have fun building like markets and such, because I like building like those tiny details, things that make builds look alive. I also didn't want to build like high fences here. Like when it comes to the queue, because this is supposed to be kind of like a garden area and there's a lot of like flowers and such, it didn't feel like it needed a high fence. And also, this is a nice fence where you can like kind of sit on. Because in the queues, like, I want to put benches in queues because sometimes, especially for coasters, queues can get horrendously long. And I want to build benches into the queues. I don't think we can actually place actual working benches in queues. But if you make a fence low enough, people will sit on it. We people are a lot more like cats than you would think. If it fits, we sit. Like the amount of times that I've seen people sit on like fences or rocks that are in queues just because the queue is long. Yeah, so these fences are sitting approved. I think they're the correct height to sit on. I also didn't want to make like the vertical poles too wide or too spread out, just because it gives it a bit more stability so that more people can sit on it. Like the main part of the queue, the cattle pen of the queue, which is still there, that's not sittable. Well, actually, kind of is. Like a part of it is, because at the end I put like some flower beds in there and you can sit on the edge of the flower beds. I also had to think like, oh, sun. I need to put some more shade on the extended part of the queue. How can I do that? I know that there's some like cloth or tarp coverings. I just couldn't find them for the longest time. And I was just like, where are they? Where are they? I know that they're here. And then I finally found them and I'm so happy. I also later on found out like, oh, more parts of this are recolorable than I thought. So now there's just a lot of tarps hanging up, because for some reason when I think of Arabian area, I just think a lot of tarps, a lot of like cloth coverings and such. And if it's not that, it's like a nice flower arch, which also has a word that I don't remember. But yeah, when it comes to the Arabian area, it's such a stark difference from like the main street, but for some reason it also really inspired me for the main street. It's kind of just like getting this out of my system and then moving back to the main street. I really didn't think like, because I am first and foremost a builder. My coasters are never going to be perfect, but when it comes to the actual builds and detailing of it, that's where I try to compensate for that. But here it worked so well. And also like a big scare of that I had, or fear that I had when it came to this ride, and when I was like sort of halfway done with it, was like, oh, is the actual attraction hidden because of like the big facade that's in front of it, or the big building in front of it? Nope. It's actually kind of perfect, because as you can see, the ship on like the hills actually goes over the roof, and it kind of looks like the ship is sailing over the roof, like it's coming towards you, which works splendidly, just so that like you can't miss this ride when it's operating because of the sound, but also just because like where else would you see a ship just coming up over a roof except like an apocalypse movie, because there it just happens every time. I'm actually happy when it comes to apocalypse movies, because if I believe apocalypse movies, the Netherlands is going to be fine. New York, you're fucked. Los Angeles, probably as well. San Francisco, Paris, London, have fun. Those are usually the only areas that get kind of screwed when it comes to apocalypse movies. And then sometimes Tokyo. Amsterdam is rarely there, or the Netherlands just in general. So, great. Anyway, so now building the market stalls, which again, completely taken from Kayan al-Bashar. It really works well that like I've built that, abandoned it, but I still for some reason know all of like the building techniques to work and build an Arabian area in Mythos. We're not going to have any flying parts in Mythos though, because it's semi-realistic, or at least supposed to be semi-realistic. So no flying islands here. Maybe in the Norse area, when it comes to Yggdrasil and such. I want to have like, this is an idea that I've had for the longest time. I want a ride or a coaster themed to Yggdrasil with a Ratatosker, and then have it be a spinning coaster. Because if we're going to have a squirrel themed coaster, it's going to be the most chaotic that it can be. It's going to snap your neck. Yes, I'm that bad of a coaster builder that I will build a coaster that will just break your neck. Can you imagine that? And then, like, coasters at the beginning of the day, they're kind of like, you know, they're kind of sluggish. The track is not warmed up. And then at the end of the day, when the track is warmed up and it's already, like, neck breaking, and then it's just like, you just get decapitated. Fun souvenir. Anyway, so now we're at the final bit, which is, funnily enough, also the exit of the ride. So when it came to the exit of the ride, it was just like, yeah, a little bit of like the harbor area remains, where this is just a wall separating like the harbor from like the actual city part. And when it comes to the Arabian area, I think it's one of the only areas that is supposed to kind of feel like a city compared to all of the other areas, with the exception of the main street, because the entire idea of the Arabian area is that it's like Umbar, or at least like the Atlantis of the sands, like the city swallowed by the desert. So it's supposed to be a city. So it's going to be a lot more build heavy and a lot less foliage heavy. I still am going to try get as much foliage in there as possible, because to me foliage means pretty, and it also has like a nice cooling effect, and it brings a nice life to everything. So I'm going to try and stuff as much foliage in there as possible, but it's still going to have to kind of look like a city, or at least a theme park version of a city, which is kind of weird. But anyways, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's going to be it. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye bye.